Well, hello, everybody. This is Juan Collado Díaz with Político, a Spotify original from Anchor.fm. And today I have Ryan McClain. Ryan is conservative libertarian activist in the Cleveland and Cuyahoga County area. Ryan, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about your political history. What do you do, and how do you get involved in the world of politics?
Let's say that I'm a libertarian with a couple conservative leanings. I am pro-life, but I'm pretty much libertarian and everything else. But anyways, I've been involved in politics since 2018. 2018, I ran for state rep as a libertarian and got 30% of the vote against the Democrat candidate. Well, almost 30% against the Democrat candidate, State Representative Brad Sweeney. And I ran again in 2022 and then 24, both times as a Republican. In 24, I think it was pretty notable because I got 45% of the vote against their hand-picked establishment candidate. Because of course, whenever someone who's libertarian or liberty-leaning runs as a Republican, the Republican Party just absolutely won't have it.
Yeah, which seems to be making a lot of sense lately. I noticed myself. I am what they call a progressive libertarian, and it's also the same thing, in the left leaning side. They do not. It doesn't seem like the libertarians are welcome in either side of the spectrum regularly, and it seems that either you get attacked or you get invited to be part of something, but it doesn't come either way.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to think that it would be a good idea for libertarians and liberty-minded folk to try to hijack the Republican and Democratic parties, progressive libertarians and the Democrats, and conservative libertarians into the Republicans. But more and more, after attempting that, I'm finding they will do everything in their, excuse my French, damn power to make sure you don't do that.
Yeah,
It's not just one machine that comes after you. It's a machine within a machine within a machine. I've been banned from my local Middleburg Heights Republican Party organization because I believe in individual freedom. I've I've been attacked by half of the Cuyahoga County Republican Party. I remember that I was actually giving a pro-life speech, and you figured that Republicans would be for that. No, they didn't want to hear it because it was coming from me.
yeah, it seems ridiculous. Just to start there, I myself,
And I know we disagree on abortion. I know
oh, no,
I
no,
know we can get
absolutely.
that out of the way.
And I'm glad that you came to the podcast and we talk about it, because the Republican Party believes in abortion, but here they are not having someone to talk about it, because they don't stand in the same in the same side, or just because the party changes, it's like the GOP and the Libertarian is, and it's ridiculous. Like personally, I'm even myself, I participated in many meetings of the conservative party, the Republican Party of Cuyahoga County, and I was kicked out after they tried to hijack the party pretty much themselves and put a third person as their president, like a different guy, and try to take over. And a couple of friends and I went in. We talked about it. We mentioned, this is not fair. This is how democracy works. And we got kicked out because we shouldn't be talking about how democracy works as libertarians, because libertarians don't believe in democracy to them.
Are you talking about a Lee Weingart by chance?
Correct.
Okay, I personally didn't think that Lee Weingart was much of a libertarian, but I think that's a different discussion. I do remember meeting you specifically in the 2022 Republican Party of Cuyahoga County primary endorsement meeting. You were wearing a Pride Republican pin, and I did thank you for standing for the true definition of liberty.
I do
If I'm not
remember. I do
mistaken.
remember. And, I for many years classified myself to be a strong conservative, and over the years figure out that I am a progressive libertarian. I believe in freedom to an extent. I believe that the government should not infringe in our rights in any way, shape, or form, and we should uphold the Constitution above any other document. And sadly, our current government doesn't do that. Yourself as a libertarian, and let me ask you, current gun policies. We know that we both feel probably the same way about it, but what are your stance on the current democratic quote unquote, the Democrat Party, gun different laws and their agenda behind guns and all that?
I think their ideas on guns are 100% incorrect because, I mean, on one end, you see them making their progressive arguments of, okay, personal freedom, get the government out of your personal life, but then under the same breath, say they want, for example, safe storage laws. Well, how are you going to enforce safe storage laws? Are the police going to come into people's homes and search the house to make sure that the gun is stored safely? That's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. That's not personal freedom. I can think of bunch of other different examples. Another comparison I can make is, well, gun control laws are going to work about as well as marijuana laws magically got rid of marijuana, right? I mean, nobody ever smoked marijuana when marijuana was banned, right? No, everybody was still smoking it whether it was banned or not. The difference is if the government bans things, it ultimately becomes more dangerous. It's why even though I am pro-life, I can stomach a pro-choice libertarian candidate because I know at the end of the day, if you just try to ban things, it's going to become more dangerous.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where my my personal stance, and I always say this to everybody. I'm also for everybody's freedom, but I also understand that when we ban things, and this comes for like anything, like when we ban things, people get attracted to it. You cannot tell someone, like for example, when I was in high school, they told us not to use our cell phones. Everybody wanted to use their cell phone because they make them look like the bad kid. Like screw it, I'm the bad kid. So when you ban things, and that's my stand also with guns. I'm very pro Second Amendment. I do believe in the common like guns, like common use of guns. Like you have a sense of how to use it. Learn how to use it before owning a gun. To be an idiot and buy it and just go around like pulling it out. I also have the rule that if you buy it, you own it, you pull it out, and you have to use it. That's also like my rule personally. Like I am pro gun. I'm a gun owner. I'm all for the Second Amendment, but I also understand, and there's many people out there that, even though it should be the right, we should not have them have a gun. But I also understand that it's not up to me to decide who owns it and who doesn't. I also believe that if the government can own it, why can't I?
Yeah, I agree with that stance as a general rule.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland Police, for example, I live in Cleveland, and Cleveland Police as of today, owns 2 tanks. As a police department, there's no need to own a tank. Let's just start there. But if they can own it, like why can a civilian? And I understand the reasons, like why they don't sell tanks to everybody. But at the same time, it's like if the government owns it and is creating an authoritarian like system, why can we, the people, like be able to defend ourselves from that government? And that's where I believe the Democrats don't understand that part, because they are also trying to become an authoritarian government and
I
control
would
most
say
of the
one of
stuff.
my Yeah, I would say one of my surprisingly more progressive views, and I do have a couple, believe it or not, is I think we should demilitarize the police. I don't think that the Cleveland Police Department needs 2 tanks, for example. I don't think that the police, as a general rule, need machine guns or grenades.
Yeah, and I think when you militarize the police, you're just giving regular civilians pretty much the power to attack and use that, and you're just giving them too much power and they don't need. Those are war weapons that should be used for war and not for the regular police officer to just own it. They should not be militarized in any way. I agree with that.
And also, I've like if I were to see a bunch of police officers walking down with military style weapons, I'm a lot less inclined to go to them for help when I need them, because the police are supposed to be there for community service, right? Unfortunately, the way our systems, our laws are designed, it ends up not being that way. I think we should get rid of qualified immunity, for example, because that allows the police to get away with horrible unconstitutional actions without any repercussion.
Absolutely. That's also like, that's one of my favorite stance, is the qualified immunity needs to go. Police officers on a daily basis, they commit something, they do something, and they think they can get away with it. One of my favorite videos this year has been on the internet, where there's 2 police departments. One is a sheriff, I believe, deputy, and the other one is just a regular cop. And he was speeding in his police cruiser to go to work. And the deputy stopped him, and he was fired, actually, because he
I
was
think I've seen that.
speeding. I don't know if you actually seen that video.
I have. It was wasn't it a sheriff stopped a regular cop?
Yes, because he was like speeding. He was going, I believe he was like 80 on a 40. So he was going like 40 miles over, and he said, I'm late for work, which is
Actually, I thought
no
it was something
excuse.
extreme like 110. Maybe I'm wrong.
It might have been actually 110. It might have been even worse than what I'm saying. I have to probably watch the video. I regularly do show notes for the podcast, so people will be able to also link the video in the show notes for people to see. But yeah, definitely, that's things like that. That's where like qualified immunity should not be a thing, and I agree with that. And going with that, let me ask you. Went a little bit into the conservative view. Let me ask you, immigration. I know that the Republican Party specifically is very strong anti-immigration, illegal immigration to be exact. Jumping the border illegally, coming to the cities. And the Democrats instead are very pro. Let's just let them into the country, give them whatever, but instead of like actually giving them something, they just throw them out in the street, throw them in a bus, send them someplace, which we have
I
seen this
am
year over and
an
over.
Yeah, I'm an immigration moderate. Like I'm the reason why I'm not necessarily for a wall is because I have concern. I have concern with the government overstepping on private property rights of some people. Like there are some people who own property that crosses into the United States-Mexico border, for example, and a wall going through that, the use of eminent domain, that's incredibly anti-libertarian. And it also is going to cost us way too much to build a wall. Instead, I'm sort of a moderate where I think we definitely need to have some security in my view, because I think that in order to have liberty, you need national sovereignty. In order to have national sovereignty, you need to have a border, right? But we also need to make sure we don't tread on the individual freedoms, especially the individual property rights of those who own property that are on the border. Like we don't want to create a police state. I mean, something that I talk about a lot is the 100-mile border zone, where the Immigration Custom Enforcement and the DHS can just randomly search anybody without a warrant.
Yeah, and that one is, I actually seen that online, and I saw a video of it happening where a lady didn't want to disclose if she was a citizen or not, and she was stopped for like over 7 hours, pretty much. She was stopped, and just because of a question, and they searched her vehicle, they searched her, and I think Homeland Security, like the entire department, like ICE, is so overpowered in a way that it's like, why are we creating such a military state, like such a police area with them, when like if you know that that person is talking to you in English, they don't have an accent, they're talking to you perfectly. And I mean, even some Americans have accents. Like, you should not, if they're talking to you and they understand you, you should not tell them like, are you a citizen, and discriminate immediately to everybody, because that's what they are. They discriminate everybody. Doesn't matter who they are. That's their job. Like, and it's a violation of every possible amendment right that you have on like no searches, like warrants. Like it violates the
Fourth
Fourth
Amendment.
Amendment, it violates your Fifth Amendment pretty much, because they also don't let you silence yourself. You have to like pretty much talk to them, otherwise they will detain you still. So it violates a lot of constitutional rights. So that's like one part that I believe in. You mentioned like the border wall, which also it will cost so much
Eminent
money.
domain is a concern of mine.
Yeah, it would cost so much money out of like our taxes, and even like Ohio people will be paying for that, and we're not even that close to the border of the United States, and so with that, let me ask you, because I probably so in the past I used to be a very strong conservative. I believed in 2016 I was a Trump supporter myself. Actually went to Trump rallies, was one of the higher up volunteer like coordinators in the Ohio/New York area. I was running around with the campaign left and right. How do you specifically feel? How do you felt about President Trump back when he ran the first time compared to now? Do you feel any difference? Do you ever like agree with his stance, disagree with them?
So in 2016, I actually did not support Donald Trump at that time, because I think Trump was a little bit more authoritarian than he is now. And allow me to explain. Like, so back then, he was making making posts like, "Oh, Edward Snowden is a terrorist, needs to go to jail." It's like, no. I'm gonna be supporting Gary Johnson as a libertarian, right? Well, more recently, he seems to have shifted in a more slightly liberty-minded direction. Maybe it's the influence of Rand Paul. He promised to free Ross at the Libertarian Party National Convention. I think that's a good example. I know he's been talking to Vivek Ramaswamy, also very slightly libertarian leaning on on a lot of issues. Um, I do think that I don't think that Trump is perfect. I don't like the Republican Party's sort of cult mindship towards Donald Trump, and I think we're going to agree on at least that point. It's almost as if whatever Trump does, they just kind of look at it like, okay, well, Trump's God, so we're just going to worship him, and I don't think that's right. I'll give an example. The omnibus spending bills of 2018, 2019, and even into 2020 that Trump signed into law that significantly increased our deficit. I was one of the loudest voices against it, and I got called a rhino for it, being in the Republican Party.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I stood against a lot of things like over the years, and slowly learned like that he was not perfect, and he wasn't the candidate for me. In 2020 I moved on from actually in 2017 I moved on fully from the Republican Party and became more of a libertarian, conservative libertarian, and then slowly started going into the progressive side, learning more about the progressive areas that I enjoyed and I supported. So now I classify myself more of a progressive. But in 2020 we had amazing candidates. We had Joe Jorgensen as the libertarian person, and an amazing campaign. Sadly, we didn't make it even as far as I wish we did. But now this year we have Chase Oliver, who was the nominee with the Libertarian Party. And I actually had Chase Oliver in this podcast not long ago, and I interviewed him, talk a little bit
that.
his,
That's the
on
one I
his
was watching, actually.
libertarian stance. I got to talk to him a little bit about where his stand on some issues, and I wanted to bring up some of the issues that I asked him to you and see how you kind of see the responses. And one of them was on education. How do you feel about the education department? Should they be should there be an education department? Should schools be privatized? How do you feel the school system should function?
I feel that the federal Department of Education should be completely abolished, and I believe that education should be left up to the states. I do believe in the 10th Amendment. That said, like Ohio, for example, I think you and I both know that Ohio schools don't really do the best job of, of educating our students. I think that we need to have a lot more local control. I think that local school boards need to be able to have more control of how students are educated. The state of Ohio does not do a good job at all. If you remember, you probably went to school around the same time I did because we're a similar age. It was a test after a test after a test after a test and a final test. And it wasn't preparing us for anything.
Exactly. I myself went to school, and I probably still have the book someplace in my bookshelf over here that I kept from school because I pay for it. But pretty much it still says, it doesn't call Russia Russia. It calls it the Soviet Union, which is a very outdated book. And I was still learning from that book. So I had to look at the teacher and I go what are you guys doing? So I understand Ohio education is awful in many ways. I do agree. And I think, in many ways we're bringing where some schools are teaching the wrong things. For example, when I went to school, back then I was, as I mentioned, a very strong conservative, and my American history teacher sent me to the principal's office every other day. I was literally almost failed the class because the teacher did not like me because I did not stand for Democrat or the liberal agenda, which to me was not what I wanted to stand for. And I still said today don't stand fully for the liberal agenda. I think that there's a lot of things that should be completely hold off. And, I have interviewed people on my podcast and have talked about how the Democrats claim to be, the gods of liberalism and the gods of progressiveness. And they're really not. They're worse every day. They're controlling, they're attacking and things like that, bring it to the schools. And then you have a teacher who's trying to push it, and you don't make it anywhere because you cannot have your own
Absolutely.
opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to discuss progressivism on the political science aspect, most progressives would be against the school to state pipeline. The school to prison pipeline, right? Well, Kamala Harris laughed about locking the parents of truant school children in jail. Truancy, as you and I both know, is most commonly caused by some sort of mental distress. Maybe there is a poverty issue. Maybe they're being bullied really badly in school. I personally know someone who's being bullied so horribly that they got PTSD just by walking into the school doors. Instead of addressing this individual's problem, the school district decided to put this individual into the juvenile justice system. And this individual, I'm not going to say he or she to protect this person's identity, almost landed in juvenile hall.
No, yeah, and that's one huge thing, Kamala Harris, just to talk, right now, Kamala Harris herself. Kamala Harris is an extremist, top authoritarian. We have to also remember she used to be a prosecutor, and she prosecuted thousands of black men for selling cannabis. So for charges that now she's screaming let's legalize, but before for her and she refused to release files from
Acknowledge
men
her
who were
past.
gonna be in death row, and she refused to release her files, so she almost killed people.
Yeah, that's
And
true as well. And what was really concerning to me was how she argued that people should be kept past their release date for cheap labor for the state. That's slavery. Those are people that should be free, and they're not. That's slavery. They're kept past their release date.
yeah, and that's I myself, I have experience with that because in 2020 I was actually prosecuted under Cuyahoga County. I went to jail for a week and a half for spray painting. It's literally one day. It's one night in jail. And I was a week and a half. I got out the day of the presidential debate here in Cleveland, actually, which was a surprise. I was there. My bail was posted. The police department the court system made everything for me to stay there for as long as I could. And when my lawyer threatened to sue, they had to release me because they were scared and they knew that they were screwing up. And that's like, when you have prosecutors like that here in Cuyahoga County, we are known to have a prosecutor who loves prosecuting children, minors, and sending them to juvie and stuff. And it's like, we need change in those departments. But then when you have someone like Kamala Harris becoming a president or even running, you're giving these people that are like power hungry that power of, okay, she did it, why can't we do it? And they're gonna go forward and keep doing it.
I mean, personally, I think that Kamala Harris is a disgusting individual. I mean, I've watched kids suffer from the cold arm of the law when they should have gotten some sort of help, especially for like once again truancy issues. Maybe it was a black kid that was having some issues with with getting caught with drugs all the time because the school system always targeted the black kids and the brown kids, but they would never look at the white kids that were also doing the same drugs. Kamala Harris is the poster child for that. Kamala Harris laughed about putting parents of truant school children in jail. She laughed about the school to prison pipeline. So I think that with progressives wanting to vote for her, it's like, why? She's everything you stand against.
Exactly. And that was like one of the things. And, I like this quote from the Libertarian Party for the past, I think they've been using it for the past 4 or 5 years. And it is, why vote for evil when there is a candidate that is no evil? Why are we voting for this? Why are we voting for the last of two evils, as they call it, when you can vote? There's so many third-party candidates. I have interviewed actually 2 of them, and I'm close to interview, I think, 2 more of the other candidates that I have already communicated with, that are willing to sit down. And there's more than 4 third-party candidates that you can get, and they are in most ballots. Like this year, we are very lucky to have more than 2 options in most American, most states in the ballot. So why vote for one of the 2 political parties that are destroying you slowly? And we have seen it for the past 4 years. We have seen awful inflation. We have seen the way the pandemic was handled around the United States. During the Trump presidency, we had to see that we weren't shut down during the presidency of Donald Trump. We were pretty much prisoners in our own homes. During the Biden administration, we are prisoners of our jobs because we have to work day and night to make even the smallest amount of money. And it's horrendous that we have to live this way. We have to be slaves to the state pretty much, and they control us in every possible way.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. During the COVID years, which you mentioned, the people that took our jobs away, the government that took people's jobs away, they were getting paid to take away your paycheck. Just think of the irony in that. But where you mentioned why vote for one of the 2 evils when we have multiple different options, I agree with that as a general rule. The reason why I'm choosing to vote for Donald Trump this year is because Donald Trump did mention that he wanted to put a libertarian into a cabinet position. As a libertarian, I think that would be something that's very huge to get a libertarian, either small L or big L into a critical role in the government. I think that would be a massive step in the right direction. Because let's be realistic here, Chase Oliver is not going to win, and he's not going to win because we have a system that is set up completely against him. I hate to say it, he's not strong enough to defeat something that is that huge, something that has been here for a very long time. You would need someone like George Jorgensen, but you would need someone not just like George Jorgensen, but somebody who has a lot of political connections. And even then, it would be incredibly difficult. You would have to win a few states, but it would have to be enough to prevent both parties from getting 270. It would go to the House of Representatives, and then the House of Representatives would have to agree to bring that third-party candidate into the presidency. It would be an incredibly difficult feat to do. I think it would be easier to, in my opinion, to support Donald Trump, get a libertarian to a cabinet position, and push the needle in the right direction.
I do agree. I mean, I think that if we can get a libertarian in any position, it is, it's great. And it also begins in our local government too. Getting libertarians elected from the local level to the federal level is the best way to do it.
I don't want to sound like the media Caucus here, by the way, because I hate the Mises Caucus with a fiery passion. Like the Libertarian Party, New Hampshire can absolutely go screw off. They
Oh,
are horrendous.
most libertarian, we both stand, I think, with this. And I personally, I'm a libertarian. I have not paid the party any fines or dues in forever. I paid it one time, and I walked away from it. The party does not represent me specifically. I represent the views of the party, but I don't feel like, for example, the Ohio Party does not represent me. And in many ways, the Ohio Party has failed the people, has failed me, has failed everybody. Um,
Dustin Nana, though, is actually a good person, and I'm willing to give the Libertarian Party of Ohio a second chance under his leadership. I mean, I've known him for a long time. I've known him since I was in high school, and I do trust Dustin Nana.
and that's good. That the party itself, like I agree in that part. I'm willing to trust him too. I'm still not trusting the National Party.
Okay, yeah,
Especially
good point. Okay.
the National Party still to me awful, and they still do their everything that I disagree and dislike from them.
What's that
Um,
lady with the pink hair that wears the Statue of Liberty on her head all the time? Like she's absolutely off the walls and shit and insane. I think she banned me because I gave an actual libertarian position on something.
she is the secretary of the National Party. I don't remember her name exactly. I know who you're talking about. She on her live streams on YouTube, she seems to kick people out because she doesn't like them. So she goes like, "Give me a second. There's someone here that I don't like," and she clicks it out and like
Because I tried to give the National Party a second chance, and then they were saying like such extreme things. I was like, no, I just can't. And then she goes and says, "Oh, look, it's just some stupid Republican who got upset because he lost an election in 2022." It's like, okay, well, you're talking about me, so let's just be honest. Let's tag me here so we can address this. You want to have a conversation? Let's have a conversation.
yeah, it's like
But no, she blocked me.
it's a one way with her. And that's how it is with most with most libertarians. Sorry about that. I almost said Republicans. We're talking about the Libertarian Party. This is how it is with most libertarians these days. At least in the national level, they have become kind of to me like the past Democrats. I in the past I used to talk to Democrats and Republicans and try to share my libertarian views. And I always learned that it's easier to get a Republican to listen to you than what it is to get a Democrat to listen. And that goes to one of my questions that I asked Chase Oliver that I wanted to ask you, with education and listening. And I had this argument with many Democrat friends and about what they call quote unquote racism here. And it is like on education. So this year we saw a student getting kicked out of school for wearing the Gadsden flag patch on his backpack. The school said that a Gadsden flag was a symbol of racism, slavery, and hatred. And they kick him out of the school. His name is Jaden Rodriguez, and he was kicked out. And the parents filed a lawsuit, I believe. So I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about that specifically? Do you think then the school should have that power? Do you
No, I
think
don't think the school should have that power.
do
So
you think then
I
people
don't
should take
personally.
people out like that, or what? How do you feel? Sorry, I think I didn't finish the question. I was cutting you off. I
My
apologize.
apologies. My apologies as well. So I don't personally agree with the Gadsden flag, but just because I disagree with something doesn't mean I won't defend your right to say it. And the school district is it is if it's a public school, it's a government building, and and inside a government building, the Constitution absolutely does apply. I'm a free speech absolutist, and the First Amendment protects all speech, so as long as you're not directly threatening somebody's life. The Gadsden flag is not directly threatening someone's life. Like you can make an argument to me, you can make an argument to me about how some people believe that you should be able to transition kids. I don't think that you should be able to transition kids, but I'm not gonna silence you because you disagree with me on something. I'm not going to silence you because maybe you're for gun control. We'll have a discussion on it. That's what this country is about. This country is about discussing. It's about discussing the ideas. The whole purpose of the First Amendment is so we can have the freedom to voice our discrepancies to the government.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that, and that's part of the thing. Talking about the freedoms and teaching. I know you were, if I'm correct, you ran for school board recently, or you were.
I was going to, but I decided to cancel that campaign. I actually want to run for governor in 2026 as a libertarian.
Oh, that's what we need here in Ohio. We need a libertarian governor for sure. That will give you that. But I wanted to ask, since you had the interest and you recently had a son, let me ask you, should schools be teaching LGBTQ plus ideology in the school system? Should be thought should it be thought in any way, shape, or form?
Nothing should be, I mean, nothing sexually sensitive should be taught to children without the consent of the parents first. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. I think that policy in itself should be able to make both sides happy. Unfortunately, like you see both sides wanting to implement their ideas without consent. That's where libertarianism comes in. Libertarianism is rooted in the non-aggression principle, which means consenting adults should be able to do as they wish in their own lives, as long as they're not harming somebody else. It's rooted in the idea of consent. And of course, children cannot consent, and that's my big concern with a lot of LGBTQ books being taught in schools. I have seen cases in my own school district where there's a book discussing how young boys can make adults feel good, and I found that to be really disturbing.
Yeah, and that's when I was at least in high school myself, I was part of the what now they used to call it back then a gay straight alliance. Now it's called a gender sexuality alliance. So I used to be part of it in high school, and it was created. But I do remember that all parents were sent a permission slip for students. It was an after school curriculum program, so it wasn't forced.
Wasn't
You didn't
hidden.
have to do it. Yeah, it wasn't also hidden. It was like very publicized. It was publicized what it was. It wasn't like they thought about like, and it wasn't like they were telling you go have sex with 20 people. They did talk about like safe sex and having like relations like with protection and stuff like that. But it was thought to be, it was thought you don't go around and do all this stuff because you're just because you're part of in the LGBT community. And I feel that like the person we had was also very strong believer of like everybody has the right to feel and act how they want, but they also but they
Don't have the
also
right to force
but
that onto somebody else.
exactly, but they don't have the right to force it on everybody else. And I feel then that help our school maintain the program, and it's still like in my high school the program is still going on. And I think then that supported, like having that mindset really helped keeping that program up for sure.
Yeah, but I would just double down as a general rule. Nothing of a sensitive, especially a sensitive sexual nature, should be taught without the consent to should be taught to a child without the consent of the parent first. That should make both the left and the right happy. Unfortunately, both sides want to force something. And for the right, it seems to be abstinence only sex education laws, and I've seen that in practice. I remember when I was in high school, I had to sign something that said I would not ever have sex until I got married. It's like, okay, well, I know half the school's already not going to listen to this, and half the school's going to go around and have sex anyways. So this isn't going to work. In fact, abstinence only sex education laws, I noticed, made it worse than what it was intended to do. If you try to enforce your values onto other people, they're going to do the exact opposite. Because they're going to, well, wait a minute, why can't I do this? What's so great about it? And on
Yeah,
the flip side, if you try to teach kids, you should do this, you should go do this horrible thing, or you should go do this sexual thing, and you should try to experiment with it, which is what some people on the far left try to do, because they'll be like, well, actually, I got permission from my teacher to do it, so I'm going to go do it. So my solution is get the government out of this and let parents discuss it with their children. And if something of that kind of nature is going to be taught, it should be with the consent of the parent.
and we were just talking, and you mentioned this, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier. We touched on it for a minute, but now we were talking about changing the subject here really quick. We were talking about making things. If you tell people not to do it, they're going to do it. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that we tell people for many years since the Nixon administration was then cannabis was this like devilish, like awful, problematic thing. And ACLU mentioned that marijuana arrests now account for over half of the drug arrests in the United States, accounting for 8.2 million marijuana arrests between 2001 and 2010. 88% were simply for having marijuana and not possessing for sale, was for self-possession. And many activists fought for legalization. I myself fought for legalization and wrote laws here in Ohio, in the state. But how do you think the justice system should treat marijuana at the state, not only at the state but at the federal level, and how should they treat it should it stay as a criminal drug? Should it still be criminalized, or should it be decriminalized, legalized for recreational use as long as you're 21 or older? How do you feel about that?
Well, 18 or older, first of all. But if you were to ask me this question, whether it be about marijuana, whether it be about marriage, whether it be about something else, if it's something that doesn't hurt somebody else, the government should stay out of the way completely. That is my response to the drug question. It's I don't personally agree with somebody else smoking marijuana. I find it to be repulsive, but they're not hurting me. And if they're not hurting me, I recognize that they are consenting adults with their rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And if that's their way of enjoying liberty and pursuing happiness, then I will defend their constitutional rights, even if I find it to be repulsive. I want the government completely out of the way, so as long as you're not harming somebody or taking their stuff. And I think that's what's making me a libertarian.
Yeah, and I do agree with that myself. And I'm not a partaker. I never has been in my entire life. Never used cannabis. Never even like tried it. Never had never had even the curiosity to do so. But I always felt like if I want to be an activist for it, I want to advocate for it. I want to talk to people here. There's plenty of studies that say that it can help someone, and there's many people with like arthritis and stuff that it can help them. Sure, and if they want to use it, they're consenting adults, they're more than welcome to do so. And with that, I know we talked, about like drugs and stuff and consenting adults. I'm also like a person that believes that if you're a consenting adult, you're not hurting anybody. You should be able to do as you please, because it's like pretty much your body. Do what you want with it. And now I
I
wanted
did
to
try
ask.
marijuana. I'm allergic, by the way.
Oh, there you go. I know people. I have two friends, and actually my girlfriend, who they all tried edibles and they have not been okay with. My girlfriend threw up. My good friend, whose name is also Juan, and I'm not talking in third person here. I swear that I do have a friend whose name is also Juan. I have plenty of them. Um, he tried it and he got a whole panic attack. Couldn't deal with it. And I have another friend who that one I won't mention because they are a nurse, and that person did try cannabis and didn't go to work for 5 days because they were in a whole state like their brain was goo for like a long time. So it's not for everybody. If you can do it, kudos to you, because I know people that can't even like be around it. So um
If I'm
but I
around it,
was
my throat starts to close up.
exactly. So I was going to like we mentioned drugs for a second there. I wanted to ask you. So California and New York implemented this, and I also asked this to Chase Oliver when I was doing his libertarian interview. And it is what is called safe use of drugs injecting centers or injecting rooms. California, or I call it California because it's a total communist state, but whatever. My favorite word for them over there, but they implemented it, and New York after that did the same thing. Their overdose levels decreased, but their usage levels increase a little more. Do you think then injecting centers or injecting rooms are okay? How do you feel about them directly? Should the government fund them or should they be privatized?
I'm a little weary on those because I have noticed that it has seemed to make things a little bit more. I don't know if the word violent is the right word to use, but it doesn't really seem to be working very well. I mean, in the areas where they're trying it, and the surrounding areas also seem to be a little bit more damaged. Now, granted, the California is a socialist state, so that could also play into effect. Maybe if you mix drugs in with socialism, it makes the socialists a little bit more crazy. I don't know.
That is the perfect quote ever.
But I will say this, as a general rule, I do want to bring an end to the war on drugs completely. If you have it's just like college campuses, for example. Like you have some colleges that have like free speech zones, right? Well, the free speech zones don't actually work because then you have people who are like maybe outside of who are like outside of the zone who don't really like what's going on. It starts chaos. Instead, have the whole campus be a free speech zone. It, why have partial freedom doesn't work? Complete freedom does.
Absolutely, I do agree with that. I Chase Oliver said it perfectly for me. I think, and I always thought of this way: is in the government should not fund those centers; they should be privatized. So they should be like privately
I
owned,
agree.
privately said. Like an entity. For example, in Cleveland, we have the Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health. they're both private hospitals, like pretty much they're public, open to the public, but they're owned by private entities, not the government. So they could definitely be, they could be, perhaps they could use those for they
But
can
Metro was a
create their
state
own.
hospital, though.
Okay, so Metro is owned by the state. I did not know that actually. So Metro, they can not do it. Maybe Cleveland Clinic can work a little bit on it, and they can do more, to support people and create more of like. Even though I do agree, like it's a support for people. I know that in my ward, specifically here in Cleveland, is the highest overdose rates. Like not my ward, the ward above me, like right up the street, has the highest overdose rates, and I've seen it, which is one of the reasons why I carry Narcan with me like everywhere I go for that reason at this point. So it's ridiculous, and instead of arresting people, sending them to jail, giving them a free life for the rest of their days, pretty much, because you're wasting our tax dollars in food and like jail, and the jail system is also so corrupted in itself. Give them an opportunity to be in a safe place and do it. And that, now that I mentioned jail, I want to ask you before I jump into my last question for you. I want to, we have seen over the years many cases of like innocent people that have been killed by the government, and by that I mean like the electric chair, lethal injection, any kind of capital punishment that they have used in the past. And going back to 1944, case of 14-year-old George Stinney, and I mentioned this one also to Chase Oliver. He was wrongfully executed by the state. So, do you believe in the death penalty? How do you feel about it? And if you have a solution for it, what would it be?
I absolutely do not believe in the death penalty. In fact, if you look at the numbers, the death penalty is more expensive than keeping someone life in prison because of the methods that we use, because of the lethal injection is extremely expensive. It's also very expensive to hold somebody onto death row because that's special holding. But take the financial arguments aside and bring the moral argument into this. As someone who is pro-life, I cannot morally be both pro-life and pro-death. I'm pro-life from natural conception all the way up until natural death, and I cannot advocate for the deaths of other people just because maybe I want revenge on them. I like even the most horrendous crimes, for example, somebody who harms a child in ways that I don't want to necessarily describe because it's an uncomfortable topic. We all know the prison inmates are going to take good care of that.
Yeah, and that's I that's also my opinion. I don't believe in the death penalty. I think that and specifically, the capital punishment death penalty, I think we should completely, it should be taken away from any of the states. The only part where I believe that something like that should happen, it's when it's a case of like pedophilia and it's a child suffering. I feel that there should be like a little of a higher punishment for that person. I don't think giving them death is the best way because you're letting them out easy. I think they should suffer a little. And that's always gonna be like, anybody who's been pedophile, hurt a child in any way, shape, or form should be punished with the worst like part of the law. Like they should be destroyed pretty much. And I guess that's where my like strong conservative, probably like the most Republican thing I can say is like hurt them as much as you can. So
Well,
that's my only feel.
those individuals should be castrated, and and if I were a prison guard, I would let the inmates have free reign on on those people because those types of individuals, they are, I think, in most cases without help, and they deserve the worst that could possibly happen to them. I have a child, and just the thought of that makes me shudder.
No, exactly, and that's I myself I look at it and it's like it's disgusting, it's awful, and you see the cases where it just goes and it's hurtful to see. It's hurtful to see people like parents that have to go through this. I've seen cases this year where like so many people are hurt over and over and over, so it's just awful.
But like, I would also ask this, like, the the police, they focus, or the government, they focus so much on people who are committing nonviolent drug offenses, but like things like horrible violent crimes like pedophilia, which is what you mentioned earlier, more and more people seem to be getting away with it to the point where you're seeing more private organizations that are doing more work to catch pedophiles than the police are.
Exactly. And like even like myself in 2020, 2021, when the pandemic started and we were all like in house arrest pretty much, I I got bored. So my friend and a couple other like friends went out and we started looking at sex offenders in our area that were not registered in the registry. And we found a bunch of them and we were just going like
Not registered?
vigilantes. They were
Did you
not
say not
registered.
registered?
They were not. And they were
Oh my
close
God.
to schools, they were close to the areas. So we went pretty much around there. We went around with like we had what the Democrats call assault weapons, by the way, like long pistols, rifles, and we just went and knocked on their door. Ohio's an open carry state, which was totally legal. And we just knocked on their door like, hey, you are a sex offender, you're not in any registry, you should be. We found your name, we found your address. Like you literally registered to vote here, but you did not register yourself anywhere else as a sex offender. It's illegal. You have 24 hours. If not tomorrow, we're coming and we're taking you in ourselves. Like we don't care. Like we will take you into to the jail system. And if they don't take you in, we'll figure out a way to get you in there. And they were registering themselves. We got like over 50 people to do it. So it was like it
That's actually
was
pretty
it
pretty
was an
awesome that
amazing
you
task.
got them to actually do that.
I mean, vigilantism is illegal in all 50 states and like every territory, but it's also to an extent like sometimes
Yeah,
it's the
but these
only
were
way to get
also
things done.
pedophiles that you were taking care of. So I mean, I can't be mad at you.
Exactly. Like that's where like, that when you have someone like that it's not telling, like I feel then that's when that freedom of like not knowing who you are goes away. When you hurt an individual, someone else, that's where like that gets cut off. And for example, when you hurt a child more than anything, that's when you lose that freedom of like privacy pretty much to let the world not to know who you are. That's where like the world needs to know that you are a pedophile and you're a disgusting person. Like, and that's where like I stand where, if you do something like that, it's of heinous of a crime, you should be punished and everybody should know who you are.
And I will also add this is like why is the government focusing so much on locking people up for innocent drug offenses or non-violent drug offenses or locking people up for other non-violent offenses, but they won't they won't make sure that like say sex offenders, what you mentioned earlier, who are not on the registry, go get registered or otherwise go to jail.
And
There
it's
are
a problem because most of our elected officials have at one point or other like also been part of that play. Like they have done some stuff like that. We have seen over the years that many of like the people we have elected come out and it's like there's like this whole entire line of like using their power to like get people like to have sex with them or like even raping people and stuff. So it's not like they're
like
also innocent.
I remember in 2020, I would get bored in college, so like I would watch like the old Chris Hansen videos from To Catch a Predator, like the early 2000s. I don't know if you remember that. I found this organization called Predator Poachers. It's run by a I think a far right conservative by the name of Alex Rosen. And when he confronts them, he presents himself as Gordon Flowers. Back in the day, he was a bit more confrontative than he is now. Like he would like walk up to them in Walmart and like chase them through the store, be like, "This person's here to meet an 8-year-old."
I do remember I've seen those. There's this new group now actually that is close to them, but what they do is, which I don't fully agree for the reason that they do let them go at the end, but they
Now
do
that's okay. That's wrong. Don't let them go. Don't let them go. Call the cops. Like,
they do beat them. So they told them you have an option. I'll give you a beating and you don't do it again, or I'll call the police right now. And they record themselves beating these people up and they upload it to social media and like they don't get taken down. But
I don't agree with that. I think that these should be like, I'm not against like these organizations like not having the confrontations, but as long as they also call the police, as long as it's like professional, like just work with law enforcement.
exactly it. Like, but if you say like, oh yeah, like I'll beat you and I'll let you go, you're putting
They're
that
gonna do it
person,
again, even if you
someone, they're
beat
gonna
them
do it
up.
again.
Even
Exactly, they're
if you
gonna do
beat
it
them
again.
up, these people have I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. These individuals have a sexual disorder, and it is called pedophilia. And it doesn't matter what you do to them, they will be inclined to do it again.
Exactly it, and they will keep doing it. And this same exact individuals actually caught a guy 3 different times, and the third time they were like, you know what? We're calling the police. Why did it take 3 times for them to create fake accounts?
Call the first time.
Like the first time, call the police. I mean, should you want to slap the guy in the face? Go ahead and just say it was self-defense or something. I don't care. Lie if you want to lie. It's up to you as a person if you want to go with that. But do call the police and get that person arrested. They do not deserve to be free. And when they're free, you're just giving them a free range to do it again.
And why is it 20 years? Why not life in prison?
Exactly it. Also, that is like a biggest part. Is like, why not just send them to prison forever? Castrate them, send them to prison, and put them with the worst of the worst. Like, don't put them with like the guy who did tax fraud. No, put them with the guy who like murdered a bunch of people for no reason. Like, put them in the
Or
same
how
exact
about let
level.
the guy who did tax fraud go because taxation is theft, and then
Exactly.
put the pedophile in his place?
That is absolutely a good, like, an amazing answer to this dilemma. Like, just let the guy who did taxation, supposedly did like a theft in taxes or whatever. Which, again, taxation, I do agree with you. Taxation is definitely theft. Just let that guy go and put the pedophiles. Make the space for them.
There was one organization that I followed that I think actually does it correctly. And ever heard of Skeeter Gene?
I think sounds familiar.
Yeah, look up Skeeter Gene on YouTube. He actually does it correctly.
Yeah, there's a really good amount of groups, and they do it so correctly. Like, they bring the police directly, and they bring the police like right with them. And I see many groups that like even like they get confrontation and they scream and they like tell the person like they did this. They were talking to an 8-year-old or whatever, but they also take the time to call the police instead of them taking like the justice to their hands, which I really do appreciate and do that, because I would rather have someone in jail, a pedophile like that, than have them free, like running around again.
So my wife told me that she saw a post from you saying that you're going to be a father. Is that true?
I am going to be a father, actually. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was going to mention earlier, and I was like, let me not bring it completely. Yes, I did share. We find out a little bit ago, so I'm going to be a father, which is also many of the reasons, even makes my reasons stronger to hate pedophiles out in the street even more. Like, I had plenty of reasons already, and this one just makes it even
Yeah,
stronger.
I can probably talk all day about that. I really, really hate pedophiles. I've seen a lot of people close to me in my life who have been harmed beyond the point of emotional repair, to the point where they have nightmares every single night about it. It it boils my blood that anyone could even consider harming a child in that way. Boils my blood.
I completely agree. And it is good because you see, like, we're talking today, and the purpose of this podcast that I wanted to like share at the beginning, I created this podcast to share people's like, voice and opinions and stuff. And we're both libertarians, and we agree on a lot of things. We disagree on like some little aspects of the
Many
thing,
things.
and like we agree on more than what we disagree on. And I wanted to ask you, that was the last question that I had for you, is how can we create unity among the two sides, put them together, because
Libertarianism.
creating like the left and right. How can it be a union? Because we most of the time we do share the same views. We just don't we don't just don't publicly talk about them as often, because we don't want to like be seen with the other side or make people think that we are the other side.
Well, I know that. Well, for one, progressive libertarianism is a very rare ideology, and that's why I'm actually very happy to be talking to you, because progressive libertarianism is so rare. I'm glad to actually learn more about that side of the liberty movement. But to answer your question as how the right and the left side of libertarianism can unite, just put like the trivial issues to the side and focus on the greater goal of living in a world where we all can be set free. Like, if there is a candidate who is a libertarian but disagrees with my conservative viewpoint on abortion, as I said, I can push that to the side if I agree with that person more often than not, and it means pushing the needle towards the direction of liberty. I would rather vote for a pro-choice libertarian than a complete authoritarian who's also pro-life, because the pro-choice libertarian is at least going to respect my privacy rights. They're going to respect my gun rights. They're going to respect my right as an adult to be left alone. Even if there's just one thing I disagree with, I can push that to the side.
This and all episodes of Político and Juan Collado Díaz are a Spotify original from Anchor.fm with music by Mackenzie Levy, also known as the Cleveland Night, and Chuck Norris approved. Right, Chuck? Chuck Norris approved.